Good morning. Welcome, everyone. All 14 of you, brave souls, here in the heat of August. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Universalist Church, where love is the spirit. We're glad you're here in the sanctuary or anywhere in the world. Some are watching us online. And welcome to those visiting or returning after a period of time. I'm Gretchen Fountain, one of the board members. One of your board members, I should say. If you are a visitor, we hope that you'll talk with our welcome team or visit our webpage, www.westhartforduu.org, to learn more about us. Our guest book or online contact page will help you get onto our electronic mailing list. We look forward to helping you become a part of the Universalist Church community. It's hard to keep track of what's going on with COVID these days. Please take good care of yourselves. Masks are always welcome here, and we encourage you to stay up to date with vaccinations or boosters. If you would like a mask, our ushers do have some that we are happy to give you. After worship, we will have fellowship in Fisk Hall and through Zoom. If you need help finding your way to Fisk Hall for our fellowship hour, any member of the church will be happy to guide you. You can follow anyone here or anyone wearing a Universalist Church name tag. You can find the link for the Zoom fellowship in your weekly news or in our Breeze calendar. If you aren't getting the weekly news, please sign up for it on our website. And now, I invite you to take a moment, take a nice cleansing breath, put away your devices, and settle in for worship, which is being led today by our sabbatical minister, Dianne M. Daniels.
Good morning, everyone. If you have any trouble hearing me, wave at me and I'll know to turn the volume up. Although Once you get to know me, you'll realize that I very rarely have been accused of being too quiet. Our call to worship this morning was written by Victoria Weinstein and is titled, "The Church is a Body." The church is a body. May this body breathe and be together in the spirit of hope. May it feel held by comfort. Those who seek consolation, may they find it in the solace of this moment. The church is a body. It is as strong as all the people who have ever gathered within its walls. It is the power of all they dreamed and all that they have done. The church is a body. It is as vulnerable as the most newborn and untried of its members. It is ancient and it is ever new. The church is a story. It is the story of lives that are interwoven, brought together in this place and this time for the simple purpose of caring for one another and helping one another along the arduous path from birth to death. The church is a vision. It is a vision of unity and diversity, a vision of reverence for all of creation, and helping one another along the arduous path. And I just lost my space in my reading. So let's try this again. For the simple purpose of caring for one another, it is a vision that beckons us beyond the concerns of our own skins. In the silence, may we abide as one body in the spirit of faith, hope, and love that is the story and the vision of this church. Come, let us worship together. It is an absolutely gorgeous morning outside. If anybody else is happy that the humidity has eased, I'm right there with you. Me and humidity don't get along all that well. Our chalice lighting this morning was written by Richard S. Gilbert, and it's entitled, "We Meet on Holy Ground." We meet on holy ground, brought into being as life encounters life. As personal histories merge into the communal story, we take on the pride and pain of our companions. As separate selves become community, how desperate is our need for one another, our silent beckoning to our neighbors, our invitations to share life and death together, our welcome into the lives of those we meet and their welcome into our own. May our souls capture this treasured time. May our spirits celebrate our meeting in this time and place, for we meet on holy ground. Our opening hymn this morning is at number 360. Here we have gathered. If you have a hymnal at home, or if you just know the words to this song, please sing along with us. Please rise as you are willing and able for hymn number 360. Here we have gathered.
Here we have gathered
words of our affirmation, our covenant as printed in the order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please be comfortable in your seats. Thank you for joining us this morning. And while our board member this morning did tell you my name is Dianne, I go by Dianne. You can call me Dianne. You can call me Reverend Dianne if you choose. You can call me Minister Dianne. But Dianne, just plain Dianne, works just fine. And if we get to know each other pretty well and we become friends, my nickname is Dee Dee. Goes along with my initials. It's kind of obvious. So if you ever forget what to call me, Dee Dee works. I have coworkers who've called me D squared for quite a long time. Although I don't know if I qualify as a square. We'll see. Our time for all ages this morning. I found this piece of text reading inspiration from Reverend Gretchen Haley, and it's entitled The Danger of a Limiting Story. The commander of a vessel that was engaged in maneuvers in heavy weather was on the bridge late one night when the sailor manning the watch noticed there was another vessel visible directly ahead of them some distance away. The commander ordered the appropriate person to contact the vessel and order them to turn so they would pass to starboard. There was an immediate response saying, "We suggest you turn immediately to port." The commander knew the formation of the group of ships with him, even though he couldn't really see them, and responded with a sharp command for the vessel ahead of him, now closer, to pass to starboard. The vessel responded, "We suggest you turn immediately to port." The commander, knowing he couldn't turn to port because there was another ship out there, pulled rank and informed the rogue vessel that this was Commander Jones of the USS Tweedledum on maneuvers, and he expected that other ship to get out of his way now. The reply came back, "This is the North Ipswich Lighthouse, sir. I suggest you turn immediately to port." The commander was almost the victim of a limiting story. He knew his role, or thought he did, and also knew his level of authority. Perhaps based on his past experience, he expected that his orders would be followed without hesitation or question. His limiting story, in this case, made him unable to accept the initial reply from what he thought was another vessel refusing to accept his authority. When we cling to ideas about ourselves or the world around us relating to our power, influence, or authority, we could be right in the middle of a limiting story and not even realize it. We get so used to living in our story that it can be difficult to realize they are limiting, and we believe the story is true. Once you realize you're stuck in a story, you can start to rewrite that story and change the outcome for the better. In this case, that was the commander realizing that he needed to turn his vessel or risk ruin by literally running into an island that was not going to make way. How many times have we refused to make way, and then at the end of it, after some thinking, realized that, yeah, we've got to adjust? I can't even tell you how many times that's happened to me, although less now that I'm a little more mature and a little wiser. I tend to give way a little more often than maybe I used to when I was younger. It is now time for our offering. The voluntary offering, the sharing of our resources for our shared work as a religious community, is a spiritual practice for us. By offering your time, talent, and treasure to this community, you help us serve the members, friends, and wider community of the congregation. As part of that service, we share our general offering each week with organizations that do work in the world that brings us ever closer to creating beloved community. This month, we are sharing our offering with the Golden Hill Paugussett Nation. The Golden Hill Paugussett Nation once occupied 500,000 acres of land that included parts of modern-day Milford, Bridgeport, Danbury, Waterbury, Woodbury, and other cities and towns in western Connecticut and eastern New York State. The tribe suffered during 1637 when they were among those harmed by the burning of the main Pequot fort at Mystic. Survivors of the horrific incident were rounded up and sold into slavery along with members of the Pequot tribe. Until 1720, Native Americans were kept as slaves in southern New England or sold into slavery in the Caribbean. Over the next 2 centuries, Paugussett reservations were reduced or eliminated by courts supporting the claims of white settlers. By 1970, Paugussett land was reduced to only half an acre in Trumbull, Connecticut. Later, the tribe used federal grants to purchase 108 acres of land in Colchester, Connecticut for tribal use. Some descendants of the Paugussett tribe still reside in Bridgeport today. To give electronically, please use the QR codes on your order of service, the links in the service description, or those on our website to make your donation to our offering. Here in the sanctuary, our offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you so much. Absolutely beautiful music this morning. Our congregational reading is at number 591 in the gray hymnal. And I have a little something I need to say before we start it, but I'll tell you when to stand for the reading. It's titled, I Call That Church Free, and was written by James Luther Adams. We often turn to our great leaders and liberal theologians to help us express who we are and who we hope to be. One such person was James Luther Adams. The responsive reading at number 591 in the gray hymnal expresses his idea of what a truly free faith would be. As we read this responsively, I ask you to think about whether these words tell any part of the story of this community. Please stand as you are able. I will read the regular printed text and ask that you respond with the italicized text, after which we'll sing the Doxology together, which is printed in your order of service. I call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence.
That sustaining and transforming power not made with human hands.
It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authenticity.
This covenant is the charter and responsibility and joy of worship in the face of death as well as life.
I call that church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship.
That protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom. That yearns to belong to the church universal.
It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through rigid tradition, giving rise to new and living language, to new and broader fellowship.
It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, on an adventure of the freedom.
The goal is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing.
It aims to find unity in diversity under the promptings of the Spirit, that loveth where it listeth, and maketh all things new.
Thank you, everyone. Let's now sing the Doxology together. Praise God for love we all may share. Praise God for beauty everywhere. Praise God for hope of good to be. Praise God for truth that makes us free. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. I want to share with you now a poem entitled Why We Tell Stories for Linda Foster, written by Liesl Mueller, after which we'll sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Apparently, because we used to have leaves, on damp days our muscles feel a tug, painful now, from when roots pulled us into the ground. And because our children believe they can fly, an instinct retained from when the bones in our arms were shaped like zithers and broke neatly under their feathers. And because before we had lungs, we knew how far it was to the bottom as we floated open-eyed like painted scarves through the scenery of dreams. And because we awakened and learned to speak, we sat by the fire in our caves. And because we were poor, we made up a tale about a treasure mountain that would open only for us. And because we were always defeated, we invented impossible riddles only we could solve, monsters only we could kill, men and women who could love no one else. And because we had survived brothers and sisters, daughters and sons, we discovered bones that rose from the dark earth and sang as white birds in the trees. Because the story of our life becomes our life. Because each of us tells the same story, but tells it differently, and none of us tells it the same way twice. Because grandmothers looking like spiders want to enchant the children, and grandfathers need to convince us that what happened because of them. And though we listen only haphazardly with one ear, we will begin our story with the word "and." Please join me now for hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Please rise as you are willing and able. And if you know the words, sing without the hymnal. But if you need the hymnal, by all means pick it up. Hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Please be seated, be comfortable. We have one more reading I want to share with you. It is a responsive reading, but you can stay in your seats and be comfy for this one. It's at number 547. It is entitled Summer Meditation. I'll give you just a second to find that one. It was written by Robert T. Weston, and it begins. Now blows the wind with soft, relaxing warmth.
The sun beats down, the schools are out.
Children swarm in the playgrounds and the streets, and eager city folk, vacation bound, crowd the broad highways.
The lakes and seashores lose their solitude, and all the world seems turned to turmoil.
What of ourselves? There could be, now, deep peace, a time for soul searching.
We might turn to examine our own lives, to sort and probe our tendencies,
to sift the true from false in the things of doubt.
the beautiful from ugliness unmarked.
The sun beats down. It is a time for pause.
Even the trees seem resting for a time, as if to meditate and gather strength for the strenuous times that lie ahead.
And shall not we? Here's the unfinished clay, half molded, that still waits on us.
To think what we have been, and as we are, still yet have to come.
Thank you, everyone. Our musical message is entitled, Whoever Writes Poems is a Lonely Man. Please now enjoy the musical message, after which you'll hear my sermon titled, The Power of Stories.
And if Einstein trodden, dent und fassen lässt und ihn auf höhere Stufe im Kreis
power of stories. This spring offered me a chance at new growth, not just because I was completing my requirements for acceptance into preliminary fellowship as a UU minister, but because I was also invited to become a member of the board of directors for the Connecticut Storytelling Center. I know of storytellers and of the organization, and I was pleased and honored to be asked to join them in their mission. They were founded in 1984, looking to build on the success of the Connecticut Storytelling Festival, founded by Barbara Reed in 1982. Their mission is to provide the experience of stories as a means of expression and communication for people of all ages. Stories are tools for thinking, reflecting, teaching, and learning, and they can also serve as a catalyst for change. Storytelling hails from a cultural practice recognized by many cultures, including the Vikings, who called their poets skardi, the people of northern India, who called their storytellers and dancers kathakar, West Africans, who called their storytellers, musicians, and praise singers griot, the Kurdish people, who called their singing storytellers dangbej, the Scottish and Irish Shanna Cree bards, who carried the tradition and history of their clans, the people of Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Armenia, and Iran, who called their wandering singers and storytellers ashik. Stories are what connect us to others, bringing us together. Sometimes we can find common ground among people who don't know or understand each other by telling stories. How many of us have laughed at a story told by a youngster about them getting into trouble for eating something they shouldn't have? Like that interesting bug that crawled on their hand, or a bit of food from the family dog's dish. Stories create a narrative that gives us a picture beyond the black and white data that's often presented to us to inform or convince us of something. How much more effective are the collections of information we've gained during our lives when we express them as stories instead of a collection of dry facts? Stories connect us to passion and purpose, what gets us up in the morning and what keeps us moving throughout our days. There's a common story or plot in nearly every film that's presented to us as entertainment or as education. Let's examine that a little bit further. We start with a character, someone we learn about and who we relate to. They are the hero. The person has a goal, something they want to achieve or become. Often, this individual is presented to us as someone that is just like us in some way: age, gender, experience, or another factor. In the Star Wars story, we're introduced to Luke Skywalker, who doubts himself and the destiny we're told belongs to him. He's destined to become a Jedi Knight, but he doesn't believe it, and the story unfolds. We relate because we've all felt that sense of unsureness, that we're being asked to do something we don't quite think we're capable of. The story continues, and our hero is presented with a problem, something they don't want to deal with, and that must be resolved before they can move forward into their destiny. In the Hunger Games movie series, it's the actual games, and our character Katniss is being forced to participate and live through this very challenging set of circumstances in order to move forward and become the champion. We all have a desire to become a champion in some way, shape, form, or fashion, to ourselves, to our friends and family, or to a loved one. We can relate to Katniss. Once we recognize the problem, we need help to create a plan of action. We don't necessarily trust ourselves to create this plan. Instead, we turn to a guide, someone who has done that, been there, and can help us solve the problem without incurring all the challenges and potentially the pain of trying to get past the problem. This guide needs to be strong, focused, and intelligent. and a decent communicator because they're going to show us the way. We listen, we absorb information, and when the guide calls us to action, we move. Once we get our minds wrapped around the plan, we're either headed for success, where we get exactly what we've been striving for, or we fail, in which case we have a choice to make. Do we continue or admit defeat? So, how does this relate to my everyday life, Dianne, you may ask? While the majority of the problems we face in daily life don't involve life or death circumstances, thank goodness, there are enough choices we have to make and enough challenges we face that this scenario keeps playing itself out over and over again. Let's begin by seeing ourselves as the character. We're the main person in the story of our lives. Not too hard to accept, right? Now let's shift to the problem. It could be something big, like navigating the closing of the company you work for, an impending relocation, or even an unexpected home repair. My husband and I recently had to plan for and find a contractor to replace our roof on our home. We knew the roof was old, but what we didn't anticipate initially was we needed to strip 2 layers of old shingles off of the roof and get down to the structure in order to have a new roof installed. We needed a guide. We'd done a previous roof ourselves before, but that was more than 20 years ago, and we were a whole lot younger. We started looking for a guide. After calling several roofing companies who never returned our calls, we finally found someone to guide us through the process. We made it through all the pre-job hoops and requirements with the help of our guide, and away we went. The expertise and experience of our guide gave us a certain amount of confidence that our story would end in success. There's a lot more I could say about this story, including the unexpected twist of needing to replace all the roof decking, the individual boards, with exterior-grade plywood and a water barrier. Old houses are full of surprises, but the job is finally done. So we can fulfill the role of the guide in the stories of our families, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and other people who move in and through our lives. Marshall Gans, senior lecturer in leadership, organizing, and civil society at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, writes, "Stories are how we learn to make choices. Stories are how we learn to access the moral and emotional resources we need to face the uncertain, the unknown, and the unexpected mindfully." We're all storytellers. If you never thought of yourself that way, let me be the first to tell you, you are a storyteller. We all have experiences that we want to share with others, and the stories we tell have power. If done well and correctly, the power of a story is in the massive effect it has on an audience, even if it's an audience of one. And it defines you as an authority, or maybe that G word, guide. Stories empower us to inspire, enliven, and create instant rapport. You can move an individual or a group to take action and change lives by relating stories. If you're a parent, you know the power of story to set an example for your children, to entertain or caution them, and to draw parallels between what happens in your life and what's happening in theirs. If you aren't a cradle you, born and raised in the faith, the story of how you found the faith and decided to adopt it as your own could prove to be immensely valuable to someone who hasn't yet had the experience. We learn a lot through shared stories. When given the opportunity, we must be ready and willing to share. Not everyone will have or even need the opportunity to share their personal and professional stories on a stage in front of hundreds or thousands of people. Sharing your stories one-on-one can provide you the opportunity to guide another perfectly imperfect human being toward their own journey and towards success. We might not always think that sharing our difficulties and even our failures have much value, But I can testify that hearing stories of challenges humanizes us. How many people do you suppose have been inspired by Oprah Winfrey's story of being fired from broadcast news for showing too much emotion, only to take that very bitter lemon and turn it into multi-million-dollar lemonade and a building block on her way to building phenomenal success in daytime television and eventually becoming a certified billionaire? How we see the past, how we envision and dream about our future, they are stories. Why we left a path that no longer served us and found our way to a new one that encourages and uplifts us, those are also stories. Why the principle that it's important to move towards spiritual wholeness, working to build a diverse and multicultural beloved community with our actions, and to accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions is important to us as a movement, and why increasing numbers of congregations within our UU faith have committed to officially adopting this principle, the eighth principle, and to acting in this way while having the tough discussions to encourage others to join us is an inspirational story that can and should be shared. Specific examples of stories that can and should be shared abound in our world. We can each be a light in the dark places by committing to sharing our own stories of overcoming, of being a guide and being guided, of how we succeed in our striving, in addition to sharing how we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and try again after experiencing challenges or failure. Spread your wings and your stories. Share the value you've found, the stories you've heard and lived, and as paraphrased from Audette Fulbright Folsom, be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works and our stories, pass it boldly to a new generation. Have an amazing week ahead. Stay cool, stay comfortable. Tell your stories and encourage someone else to share theirs. Please join us in our closing hymn, number 175. We celebrate the web of life. Let us join our hearts and spirits in gratitude on this beautiful day where we have the stories of our past and present before us and where we realize the power of the stories we will write and tell in the future. On this day, we remember all those whose personal stories have ended. May their good works live on in their names. May we encourage those whose stories are still being written, to understand that their past is not a millstone holding them down, but instead a foundation for the stories they build from this moment forward. Let us wish that the stories shared will travel abundantly so that many can listen and learn from the experiences of others and therein find more in common than that which is different. For all that is our lives, for all the stories, both good and difficult, we offer gratitude. May the stories we hear move us to act with power and compassion and to live our own stories to the fullest. Let us speak together now our unison benediction, which is in your order of service. Engage with the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Please be seated, relax yourself, and remain for our postlude.